Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance. Now, it's time to welcome two serial entrepreneurs, leaders, husbands, and fathers who are passionate about sharing the strategies that are helping them excel in life and in business. Here are Mauricio Garcia and Hubert Humphrey.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Conquistador Podcast. My name is Mauricio Garcia, and as always, I am joined by my friend, mentor, partner, the great Hubert Humphrey. Hubert, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. It's just great to be with you today. I'm excited about seeing and talking with all the great entrepreneurs out there.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited for the topic that we have today. I assume, and I probably right about the fact that most business owners, entrepreneurs, as they go about trying to grow their businesses, they have visualized themselves as being able to not just be regional, but maybe national, and many of them international. And so there's a lot of examples out there of how companies were able to go from a regional operation to national and international. In your case, maybe some people know, and some of the people that don't know about you and the things you've done in the past, I mean, you were actually able to scale from a regional operation to then go internationally to many, many different countries. And I'm curious as to what was the kind of the model, the system that you kind of followed to be able to accomplish that. And so I know that there's a lot of different models, right? There's the Starbucks models, and there's a lot of different companies that have gone into like a franchise model, and others are a little bit different. But there's probably a beacon or an example of how it is to really go nationally, and that would be McDonald's. And I wanted us to talk about that example because I think it really describes the importance of systems and how you're able to, by having a system and something simplified, you can really scale.
Well, you're right, and the key is to simplify to multiply. And if something's not simple, if it's not duplicatable, if it's not teachable, transferable, portable, if those things don't exist, you're never going to be able to get very widespread and not very big. But I look back in my career, and a system has just been the key to me. I am a system leader. I'm a system builder. I'm a system type person. I have a system mindset, and that's really what saved me in the very beginning. Is that I was able to have a simple system to follow. And of course later, as I studied McDonald's, one of my deals was that I wanted to become the McDonald's of financial services, and that sort of was an objective of mine. And so I studied Ray Kroc, and of course, we call our system the leadership format system, and he had the business format franchise system he had, and that's what he actually called it. And it was a formatted deal, and what really happened with Ray Kroc was he started what I call the turnkey revolution. Mm-hmm. He was able to have things so formatted, so streamlined that it was duplicatable. And as you look at the numbers, these are not recent numbers, and I'd love to get the recent numbers. But about 10 or 12 years ago, when I last saw these numbers, it said that McDonald's was feeding 6% of the U.S. population per day, had 75% of their employees were teenagers, and had 300% turnover ratio of their employees. Now you just take a look at those numbers. That's a big deal, guys, to have those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
You better have a system, especially if 75% of the people that are going to be dealing with the public and running your systems are teenagers. It had to be almost dummy proof, if you will, to make that happen. So he had a formatted system. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment here, but a system is something that saved me. If I look at all the different things that happened in my career and in the career of a lot of businesses I see that are super successful, is that they had a system.
Yeah.
I don't care if you Walt Disney with Disney World and Disneyland, any of those things. You mentioned Starbucks, any of these big franchise operations out there, they're modeled after what was happening with Ray Kroc.
It's really interesting. I remember watching the movie, this Ray Kroc, the whole McDonald's story movie, and he was actually he wasn't maybe the most structured person. Actually, the original founders, at least in the movie, it's like one of the brothers was kind of like the mad scientist. He's the one really timing every process, even mapping out in a tennis court like all the areas of how the kitchen should be, so that a hamburger would be produced in 30 seconds or something like that. And so that was really what amazed Ray Kroc into seeing something, or he saw something there that he hadn't seen in any other restaurant, because he used to sell milkshake mixers or something like that, right? And so he saw that, and I'm assuming that's what created an epiphany in him to say this is something different, because it was systematic and it was solving a big problem, which is getting the food from order to delivery within seconds. Yeah.
Well, the thing about Ray Kroc is just like Henry Ford. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. He just took something that had already been invented, and people knew how to put an automobile together, but they didn't know how to mass produce it. Ray Kroc didn't invent hamburgers. He didn't invent the little systematic way of that the McDonald brothers had started their little franchise, or it wasn't a franchise, they're just their little a couple of hamburger places that they owned. But he took that and streamlined it, and took that model and replicated it. Just like Henry Ford had an assembly line method, Ray Kroc had a business franchise format system that made it now high volume and transferable to a big way. And I didn't invent insurance and annuities and investments, but I just took that along with Art Williams and his great crusade, and we took that together and literally changed the insurance industry forever, because nobody had ever marketed a buy term and invest in different.
But I see a lot of similarities between the Ray Kroc story and your story, in the fact that Ray Kroc found this system, literally, that it wasn't the hamburger that amazed him, it was that system. And then you told me about a story where you got a letter in the mail, this one little page with 6 steps. That was the system, right. And that created the epiphany. You put that to the test in a lotions and potions industry for a while, and then you merged that into the financial and insurance industry and revolutionized that industry. 2-3 decades in a row.
Right. Well, you're right. It was. Again, I didn't invent the system, the seed of the idea. I had been on the railroad all these years trying to escape, looking at a lot of different things, and then I was introduced to Amway by one of my fellow railroad buddies, and started a little simple business, didn't take much money, and I got started with them a little bit. And over in the first 3 or 4 years, I was just stumbling along and recruiting a few here or there, and trying to motivate a few people here and there. And it was sort of random. And then all of a sudden, the guy that was at the top of my deal here, the first triple diamond in Amway, his name was Bill Campbell, and Bill Campbell was an engineer by trade, had an engineering mentality, very full-minded. He would have probably been a Ray Kroc type of mentality, and he said, "Listen, we've got to get this systematized," and so he set up for his own diamond club. He set up a formatted system. And it was just for the diamonds. But one day, I'm just a little small guy down in Macon, Georgia, not really doing a whole lot. Even though I was driven, I wanted to be somebody. And I accidentally, it's a little glorious accident, I get in the mail an envelope that says Campbell Worldwide Diamond Association. I thought I'd gotten a letter from God. I didn't know what was going on. He'd never sent me a letter. And I opened it up, there's one little sheet of paper in there that said, The Start. And it had 6 little steps down there. It didn't even have a number. It just had 6 words. It was like it was a code. Uh-huh. It's like a secret code had come to me. So I actually called up there and tried to get somebody, and I finally got his assistant, and she told me very quickly, that when she found out what I was asking about, that I wasn't supposed to get that. That was only for diamonds. I said, well, I apologize, I've gotten it. So I had it. But they didn't have any backup information. They never sent me anything else. But I just sit there and kind of made it. It was just very logical, the steps, and I used that and turned that into what I call the leadership format system. That was the genesis of it, and I took that little formatted system and just perfected it, systematized it, added things for the financial services industry, and put it on the same platform that Art Williams and them had laid out. And boy, that delivery system took off, and it's helped us build 3 great, gigantic, multi-billion-dollar type companies in the largest industry in the world, a highly regulated industry. So it works any place when you get a system.
I've got a couple of questions to follow up with that. One is that just like Ray Kroc kind of accidentally came into that system, you accidentally got this letter, but now we can be intentional. Of the millions of entrepreneurs out there, business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs, how can we go about just understanding that we need to systematize? In other words, study our current process and systemize, create one, because, you got it in the mail. Ray Kroc found it by accident as he was going and sell some milkshake mixer. But a lot of us sometimes go in business and, we have a certain process. We just haven't really spent the money, the time to put something together. So that's one question, how we go about now being intentional about it. And the other thing is that the system that you have been using over the past 3, almost 4 decades now, what is that system? Can you go deeper into it? And I'm sure it varies depending on the industry that you're in. But I've looked at it. I'm using it to build, this company that we're building, that I'm associated with you in, that has a certain steps, and I think those steps apply in any industry. I don't care if you are a doctor, a lawyer, if you sell lotions and potions, or if you're in the insurance industry.
Right. Well, a system is just a concept of getting things sequentially done. Like in I heard a guy one time tell me who had played professional baseball. He actually had played in the major leagues briefly before he was injured, and his coach had taught him about the perfect baseball swing. If you're a batter, you're swinging, or whether you were a golfer swinging, or whether you were a pitcher throwing the ball, or a tennis player hitting the ball, anything to do in athletics. He said it was the sequential unlocking of all your body parts in the right sequence, right motion at the right time. And anybody that's ever played any of these sports, especially like golf or something, or baseball, you can start the wrong muscles at the wrong time and get everything all messed up, and you never become good at it. You can't repeat it. And so a system is nothing but the sequential unlocking of all the things that success needs for you to have in your business in a sequential or timely order, where you can repeat it over. It's the rapid, relentless repetition of simple steps. And in our case, it was very simple. And this is what I saw on that sheet of paper many years ago. Prospecting, the approach or contact. Number 3 was the actual presentation, whether it's a group meeting or whether it's a web bop or Zoom or one-on-one, it's the meeting, a presentation. And then number 4 was the follow-up. Because I added some filters so that the follow-up became a real successful step. I put some filters in it, which is a little different subject there. But then it was the startup. After you followed up properly, then you start somebody up, and then number 6 is just duplication. It's just over and over and over again, and then it's just a matter of the magic of compounding and overs, and that's the key. And if you want to have any success, if you were investing money, you want the money, you want the interest that the interest is making to make money, and you want that interest to make money. You want compounding to occur, and it's got to have systematic repetition for compounding to occur. And the thing about the system, in one of the great books I read many years ago, it's called the E-Myth, the entrepreneur myth. It's called the E-Myth, and in that book he described about a lot of businesses. And he used McDonald's as one of the business models that they were talking about. Talking about Walt Disney and others that had used a system. and it was a great quote in there, and I'll just paraphrase it. It said that said for ordinary people to do extraordinary things, a system or a quote unquote way of doing things unquote is necessary to compensate. That's the key word, to compensate for all the lack of money, lack of skill, lack of ability, lack of knowledge, lack of all the things that success requires. Most people who are starting out in businesses don't have those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can find a proven, tested system that you can just plug into, that's your best bet to be successful. That's even what Harvard Law School says. If the three major things you ought to look for if you want to have the absolute greatest chance for the most people to be successful, find a plan that works, meaning a system that works, a proven, tested system. Number two, one that's got mentors. And number three, that's got the architect of the system. But everybody can't have that. A lot of people have to go out and try to start their own system from scratch. But whatever it is, you need to take the commonsensical steps that it's going to take for you to be successful and to be able to repeat it and to be able to transfer it even across the nation if need be, that you got to do that. You've got to get it very simplified to multiply it. And one of the things that we added to our mix over the years is that the system, we treat the system as if it's a living, breathing thing. In fact, I call our system it's the alias by which success goes by. Success is our boss, and success actually has an alias. It's the leadership format system. And so, if we don't follow this system, that's our boss. If we don't submit to it, we have to have a submission to our system, and to follow that. And in every one of our 6 steps, it has leader. A leader will help you with prospecting. A leader will help you. A leader. So there's a mentor attached to every step. That's what causes it to be able to take off. It's why we were able to go out and recruit 1.5 million people in those 14 years in A.L. Williams to launch it, which became the great Primerica company, is that we brought all those greenies. It's like Ray Kroc brought all those teenagers in. We brought all these greenies into a highly regulated industry. And we simplified it so we could multiply, and a system was the key.
Interesting, and obviously I know there's a lot of authority behind that, because when you go and you look at the World Financial Group today, the great Primerica today with dozens of thousands of agents, and you were the architect behind the systems that built those companies. And as you describe those 6 steps in there and some of the filters that we didn't get into, I want to get some more meat out of you in this podcast, because there's, you mentioned the importance of simplifying. It's very easy to remember prospecting, contacting, presentation, and follow-up, startup, and then go to duplication, which is what you just described. But there's also systems within systems, and there's also more of the psychological piece of it that we may not have enough time to go into the podcast to the whole thing, but it's how you've used this system to really grow. Some of these companies I just mentioned are more nationally today, but you were, before you actually sold these companies, you were actually growing very rapidly internationally even. Wasn't that true?
Right. The one thing that made ours, just like McDonald's was able to go international, because everybody liked fast food. I don't care what country you were in. It was something everybody's wanting to do, because the whole world now is on the move, and so it was just a great idea. The thing that we market, even though we market financial services products, life insurance, annuities, etc., other things, the number one thing that we market as a company is we sell dreams. And one reason why we've been able to beat most of all the other so-called traditional insurance companies is they were selling insurance, we were selling dreams. And we brought that into the mix. So that's a big deal in there too, to make this happen. But let's talk a little bit about the psychology. Yep. The reason why Ray Kroc really knew he had to systematize this thing in a much bigger, better way than the McDonald brothers did. It's kind of an interesting thing about the McDonald brothers. They just had a couple of little hamburger stands, and their vision was from the counter to the end of the line of the customers waiting to get their hamburgers. That was about all they saw. They never saw anything beyond that. They were just making a living, and Ray Kroc accidentally is out there to sell them that milkshake mix with that. By the way, it was a new 5-pronged milkshake mixer. So he was out for a different reason, and he's just blown away by. He said these guys have no idea what they've got a hold to. And while he's just sitting there watching them, before he ever even got to talk to him, he was already seeing McDonald's somehow be taken all over the country. In his mind, he had already laid out a plan before he talked to him. So then he gets to talking to him and ask him, had they ever thought about franchising? No, they didn't think about that. But long story short, he had the vision, they didn't. So one of the successful, I don't care how big your system is, how great your system is, if the people running the system hadn't got a big vision of how to use it, the system is only as good as the vision of the leader. And so Ray Kroc, he later bought the whole franchise name from him, and then he went and magnified it. And up where you live, up in Chicago, still right there in Oak Brook, the original McDonald's that he set up, the perfectly running model. That's the first point I'll make. He wanted to set up a perfectly running model up there because he knew he was in a competition for a lot of other companies out there were trying to compete to get people to invest in them. So he one of the things he says, he had a huge problem. He had big dreams, but he didn't have much money. So he had to capitalize this thing some way, and that was by having people invest in. Now, we don't do franchises at HDI. We don't sell any franchises, and we don't require investments in our to start our business. But just to use his model, he built it on other people's money. And then what he wanted, he also said the opportunity had to be bigger and better than any other opportunity out there. He knew he couldn't just have an average and ordinary opportunity. He had to have the best one. And then it had to work every time, no matter who was working it and running it, teenagers or what. It had to work. He could not have his franchises fail. So it had to be foolproof. It had to be predictable. It had to be profitable, and it had to allow him to work on his business and not just in his business. See, because a lot of times in that E-Myth book, it talks about the number one reason most entrepreneurs fail. 95% of them. There's a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is that they revert back to a technician mentality, and they just go back into working in their business, and nobody's working on their business. The system saves you from that. And so that was the key. So he wanted to make sure he had a prototype, a perfectly running model, and then that allowed him to, if he ran the system would run his business.
So there's really no way out of let's say that business whole unless you have a system. And then when we talk about value, because some people may be thinking, well, I'm doing great, I'm selling a lot and I'm making all this money, and they haven't really taken the time to create. Because what you're talking about right now, it's like a big picture system, right? And then there are systems inside the systems. I just wonder if you you were part of two major sales in the financial industry, and I'm sure that these monstrous companies that went in and purchased these assets, they were looking at systems. So speak about value, because I want the listeners to understand how important it is to really have the big picture kind of system, but also invest in building their little systems inside, like the processes and stuff like that. I'm sure you had to do a lot of that to be able to add the value, right? Because companies buy data, customers, systems, and other things. So,
well, every facet of your business, whatever industry you happen to be in, is going to have an administrative side, a manufacturing side, a processing side, a customer service side. All of the and in our industry, it had a legal side for licensing and appointments and all those. So there were 4, 5, 6, 7 major spokes of this wheel, and every one of them were subsystems of the main system. But the main system was the opening of the outlets, the recruiting of the people. In fact, we had it set up with the filters over there. It was a continuous opening of the outlets with these 6 simple steps. Then it was the simultaneous movement of production through the outlets. That was one of our secrets, is that we were able to because our outlets were people. They could consume our product. They could replicate. They were mobile. They knew people. Our outlets were not brick and mortar. Our outlets were people. So we had a super model to build with out there. But the bottom line is that every facet of your business has got to be laid out in an orderly, systematic way. And whether you're hiring employees on a staff to do these various things which you have to do, they need to be formatted. They need to do it the same thing. For example, if somebody in the commission department says, "Oh, they'll do it this way this time," and next commission cycle, well, we'll do it this. Well, you'll have commissions all screwed up.
Right.
You know, if you were trying to keep up with appointing agents to companies, well, we'll do it this time. No, we actually have something called Sure LC, which is you just plug in one time, put all your information, and no matter which company you want to get with, it's already pre-populated, it's systematized. So everything has to be robotic in nature, and you got to turn human beings. Don't lose their heart, their passion, but they've got to become like a machine-like in what they're doing, and it'll have that what I call that cookie cutter exactness. You know, if just something simple. If you were in the kitchen and you were going to cook some nice cookies, you wanted some nice star-shaped cookies for the holiday season. Well, if you went out there and you rolled the dough out on the table, and you got it smooth, but you're gonna get a little knife and you're gonna start. I'm gonna make a star. You start trying to cut a star-shaped cookie. Well, this one looks kind of big. Well, you cut the second one. It looks different. Yeah. And next thing you know, you got star-shaped cookies all over the place that look different. But if you went and got a cookie cutter, one of those cookie cutter things go bam, 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 bam. Every cookie looked the same. Yeah. That's what you're trying to have, that cookie cutter exactness. That it's like you're a Xerox, old-fashioned Xerox copy machine where you got every copy comes out looking the same. And that's what a system does for you.
Good. A lot of entrepreneurs, and I made the big mistake of that, is that when I first started in business, I was doing really, really good compared to, when I was an employee. And the first thing I started doing was obviously investing in my image, in me. In other words, spending the money. And I've watched you make investments in systems. And, if you look at what is one of the best investments that entrepreneurs can make as they're growing their business, we know if we're, I guess, a smart entrepreneur, you're not eating the revenue, the gains of your business in consumption, buying nice cars and nice clothes and nice watches and all these different things, but rather investing in building these systems that can enable you to really scale and build wealth long term. Like I've seen successful entrepreneurs, including yourself, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you make big investments in systems now to be able to make a very juicy exit later. What could you say to that? I know it gravitates around systems and investing in systems because it's that important.
Well, today in technology, you can get everything formatted so much easier. Much less money it has to be spent using technology to get things. For example, when we built the big A.L. Williams company, there ended up being a couple of thousand employees at the headquarters, and probably that many more at a couple of the insurance companies. And had big iron. IBM had the biggest in the country out there. Big iron technology, had to be cooled and had to be raised up and have its own room, and all that stuff then was so expensive. And then in our second company, we were able to go down to about a third of the people, and use better technology then. And of course today, many years later, well, now we can do with 15 or 20 people what we were doing with 1,000 people of hiring. Right. And we can just in a smartphone, you've got more power and bandwidth than you had in the IBM Big Iron 35 years ago. So you don't have to spend as much, but you do have to spend and commit to have it done. And it's not so much the money you spend; it's what you create with the money. And get it perfected. Get everything organized. Get good people, and make sure they're following a good system, and it will deliver for you. And the ultimate thing that causes evaluation down the road at the end of the game is did you deliver? Did you execute? Whatever it is you're doing, because if the volume doesn't come of the products you're selling, the services you're providing, whatever it is you've monetized your business on. If you're not building that up high enough, you won't. There won't be a valuation event. But the systems and commitments up front are really the things that provide that. And the people aren't buying just your systems, because the companies that are buying you, they could go out and buy the same computers and the same stuff. They just wouldn't know what to do with it. It's that knowledge, that intellectual knowledge that you've got, that the people skills, the way you run it. See, I can give you a system all day long.
Right.
It would be like if you could picture a safe, Mauricio. If you could picture a big old safe, a vault. It's got a combination lock on it, and that combination lock now is all on that dial. It's nothing but numbers, from 1 to 100 usually. Okay, 0 to 100, and that, but some combination of those numbers from 0 to 100, that you have to do. How many forward? How many back? How many? Only you know that code. If you use it, everybody out there has got the same 0 to 100 numbers, but they don't know the code to your safe because they don't know how.
Absolutely.
They don't know the combination.
Great analogy.
So that's what you've got. You've got a system, and you know how to do it. You know how to make the system work. You know the nuances of it. Really, it's the psychology of the system. You know, maybe I can end it with this. You know how to unlock the secrets of the system. You know how to unlock the code to the system. And that's what causes you to be able to transfer it, build it, become valuable down the road in the scheme
and I
of
think
things.
that what you just said right there is what I wanted to get to, because sometimes, like, somebody could take the HGI system, the same system you've used over the past 30 years, and probably will not get the same result because there's a lack of understanding of the psychology. So it's not just writing down the prospecting, contacting, presentation, follow-up, initiation, startup, and duplication, but rather the whole psychology. How did you acquire that psychology? I know we're running short or out of time, but is that psychology learned over time? You know, it's part of the system, right? The system runs on a certain process, right, but they're also fueled by this psychology behind it. And I think the psychology, would you say, is as important as the 6 steps? Maybe even more.
Well, it's more important because there's a ton. I've written several books, and a lot of guys out there that have learned a little bit of our system and have our materials. Our materials are widespread out there, and a lot of guys are out trying to follow that system, and they're recruiting and building up nice little teams and companies. But they're nothing ever at the scale we've ever built before, because they only had bits and pieces of it. So when you've got to be careful who you follow, be careful who you align with, and make sure that if you're following a copy of the system, is it the master copy or is it a watered down, diluted copy that you're following? The closer you are to the original, the better copy you're going to have if you were using a copy machine. So just remember that principle that you need to do. And that's one thing that we've got to do. Remember I said a while ago that Harvard Business School said there were 3 things. You know, find a plan that works, a proven, tested plan. One that's got mentors that will help you. And number 3 is the architect of the system. And very few businesses, McDonald's, Ray Kroc's not there anymore. Bill Gates is not involved in his business anymore. You know, Colonel Sanders is not involved in the Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore. You know, on and on and on. Very few businesses still have the original architect. But you can run it. You can get enough of the system in it that a little bit of the system at a certain level can keep it going. But just know that the psychology of it ultimately is the key. Be a student of learning your business and teaching it to your people real well.
Awesome podcast. And I think to learn these secrets, these principles, the psychology, we have an opportunity coming up, guys. This is going to be March 26 and 27. We've got the Conquer event. It's an event where not only Hubert is going to be there. Of course, I will have the opportunity to be there. But we have a group of very successful entrepreneurs, the real deal, what we call them, that are going to be there with us at the Conquer event, sharing their systems, the psychology, their strategies, their secrets, if you want to call them. That they don't keep them a secret. They're going to be at the Conquer event to share those secrets. In the case of Hubert Humphrey, imagine being able to hear from the architect of a system that has built not one but two multi-billion-dollar companies on his way to building the trilogy, the biggest ever, and using those principles. So you do not want to miss that event. This is not one of those rah-rah, let's get you motivated here. We're actually going to show the real secrets that are that you need to learn to really grow, any business. So go to conquerevent.com, register today, and join us March 26 and 27. And if you would like to make some money, if you would like to increase your income, because if you're like most people, if you're like Hubert and I, we may have many different, we may be different in many ways, but we are so much alike in the fact that we want better lifestyle for ourselves today, we want better lifestyle for our families, and we need the right vehicle. And so with that being said, if you want to make some money, if you want to go from where you are today to where you have always wanted to go, I invite you to go to hgiopportunity.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Hegemon Group International, you are now able to jump into this opportunity, take advantage of this window of opportunity right now, and just better your life in many, many, many different ways by learning a skill that can really help you help other people solve their most common financial problems. So check them out. Check out the opportunity by going to hgiopportunity.com. And if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to click that like button. It really helped the algorithm to push our content out there so that more entrepreneurs can listen to our content. And if you are listening to us on any of the podcast platforms, whether that's Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, well, share this with your friends, share this with your family, people that are in business, people that are thinking about going in business, people who have that, that entrepreneurship spirit, so that they can benefit from this value and this content that we share every single day. Hubert, thank you so much, as always, for doing this, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, good to be with everybody. See you next podcast.
Bye.
Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance.